that the future could bring millions more migrants to these shores, uncontrolled and unmanageable.
Because it means that economic migrants taking advantage of the asylum system will not get to stay.
They will not get to stay.
We are raising our game.
Britain is the home to over 4 million Muslims. They work here, they teach here, they own businesses here. Yet recently, many have felt scared to leave their own homes. Why? Because self-acclaimed pro-British protesters believe that Islam, Muslims and immigration is a cause to all their problems. That's why I'm here in Liverpool, the home of the UK's first ever mosque built by Abdullah Killiam. And I'm here to ask 2 questions. What do people think about Muslims? And is Islam a threat to Britain's future? Britain has had a long-standing history of dealing with the far right. From the racially motivated killing of Althab Ali in 1978 to the rise of the fascist British National Party in the early 2000s when it had over 50 seats in local government. This latest round of far-right movements has been instigated after rumours spread online that the murder of 3 young girls in Southport was conducted by a Muslim immigrant and that his identity was being protected by the local authorities to stop a potential increase in hate crime. However, this was simply not true. In fact, the perpetrator had no links to Islam and was actually born in Wales. Despite these rumours being dismissed quickly, a significant number of protesters still saw this as an excuse to loot local businesses, set fire to personal property and spread fear across Britain. This eventually led to a growing anti-riot and pro-immigration movement to develop in support of refugees and British Muslims. The Abdullah Killiam Mosque, the first ever mosque built in the UK, was one of the first buildings that had to engage with such protests. The city of Liverpool saw some of the largest far-right protests, with an asylum centre being forced to close down for safety of its workers. Now, when I had arrived in Liverpool, I immediately noticed the multiculturalism that the city had to offer. And it surprised me that just a few days ago, this city, known for its proud identity of being Scouse, was divided and in turmoil. And so I wanted to speak to some Liverpudlians and ask them what they thought of the recent events.
The reason, be honest, there's no reason. I don't know why the people on the street.
I would like to know why Islam is a threat to them.
I think it's a matter of the immigrants coming into the country where they're not, they don't know nothing about them. And they could be anybody that they're bringing into the country. And this is the reason, and they should be basically sent back because nobody knows anything about them. They're coming over with no paperwork or anything like that. And that, I think, is the main issue.
Whatever, religion, football, whatever. We have the hatred built in us as human beings, and that's something that we must overcome, but we don't overcome.
It's normal to protest, but when it turns out to be a violent one, that's not a protest.
I think a lot of it was provoked due to people's racist beliefs, and they just use that as an excuse
To protest and riot.
And target people who were uninvolved.
What about yourself? What do you think?
Well, I actually agree. I think it started off with with obviously what happened with the kids and everything, but I think now it's just, well, not now, but like people just push their own beliefs on it, and just whatever they believed in, they just rioted for it anyway.
tonight, Adam Kelwick has invited Muslims and non-Muslims alike to engage in real discussion, to actually have a conversation and answer the questions, what is going on in Britain, and more importantly, what can we do about it?
As I came in, I did greet a few people, and we've been told that there are some individuals who were even on the side of the protesters and the other side of the street last week who were here, and I want to thank you for being brave enough to accept our invitation. It really means a lot. We probably won't agree on absolutely everything, and that's fine. That's not necessarily bad. But what I do hope we will agree on by the end of our event today is that, number one, we're all human. Number two, we all have deep-rooted concerns for our society. And number three, that we share these concerns and we are able to come and bring the solutions together. So this is my hope from the event.
The reason why I wanted to come to this event in particular was because of the unique approach that Imam Adam Kelwick had to dealing with the protesters outside his mosque. Rather than screaming and shouting, Imam Kelwick went viral on social media after engaging in discussion with the protesters.
Forget about online and all these crazy websites, and even the mainstream media now, they're pushing so many false narratives. We want people to come together, to talk together, to eat together. So keep your eyes open for that. Everybody's more than welcome to come along to that. And again, thank you all for coming here tonight. It's really appreciated.
Decided to respond to their hatred with kindness, give them food, listen to them, welcome them into the mosque. And here we are 1 week after the protests outside our mosque, and people from all over the country are messaging us saying we want to become Muslim, saying we want to learn more about Islam, saying your religion is amazing. I've never really looked into it before, but you've inspired me. The best way to destroy a lie or a falsehood is with truth, and that's what we've done. We've just been honest. We said, ask us tough questions and we'll give you honest answers. And some people today, they did ask some what could be deemed pretty tough questions.
Now, for Muslims who maybe are struggling right now, maybe they're scared to approach far-right protesters, they're scared to even come out of their homes, go to their jobs, go to events, what advice would you give to them?
So the main thing has to be safety and security. But then after that, it doesn't, you don't have to run into a far-right process. Just speak a little bit more with your friends and your families and your work colleagues and people in society who don't really hear this. Because if you're not speaking to them and you're silent about Islam, somebody else is going to be telling them about Islam. And the chances are it's going to be fake bots on social media or people with hatred to push. Many of our mosques up and down the country, they've always been engaged in this interfaith dialogue traditionally. And that's good, it's beneficial and it's needed. But I think what we've seen after the riots now is we need to go to a new phase. It's not about the religious leaders sitting around the table and realizing that they all get onto each other without passing those messages down to the rest of the society. We're talking about people on the streets, people in gyms, people in boxing clubs, people from working class backgrounds, people from different parts of our city. And we've proven that it can be done. We're going to continue this work, and we'd like to bring everybody else from our Muslim communities to follow us in this work and know that we're not following except in the footsteps of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
When I crossed the line last Friday, and the first interaction that I had was, a teacher who said, mashallah, sister, I think you look beautiful. And, we presume that, the whole alliance on the other side or a homogenous kind of far-right group, and a lot of them are dangerous people who want nothing but, to terrorize you. People who are often at the sidelines, who are observing, that you need to speak to, because those are the ones who are at risk of kind of falling or being further entrenched within those views that need correcting as early on. So it's almost empowering ourselves with the language and the skill of articulating our faith, but also in almost, being personable, being, having a joke with some of these people and almost establishing common ground. That's been the most important part for me, is a lot of people that you might meet on the other side who are Christian, who have no idea that there's a lot of kind of commonalities within our faiths.
When Muslims, minorities, people who are on that side of the debate, if you want to call it, they've been scared to come out, potentially, some of them, because of the far-right protests or because of some of the things that they've been doing. What would you say to them? What would be your advice in tackling this issue of having, an increased number of far-right protests and people getting hurt, essentially, because of the color of their skin or the scarf that they wear on their head?
No, absolutely right. I think they should not be scared. And first and foremost, those people, the minority who are protesting as the far right, they don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you. They're led by some groups which they've been misled by saying one thing, and they're actually coming in thinking that the ethnic minorities or the Muslims are taking over the jobs. But what they don't realize is the NHS is full of Muslim doctors. When they get hurt in one of those protests, some of them did, and when they go to the hospital, the first person they probably would encounter is a Muslim doctor or a consultant or a surgeon.
There's been a lot of people talking about civil war, chaos, riots, protests, violence, etc. All these words being used. What does the future of Britain look like, and what role does Islam, what role do Muslims play in that future?
I think the future of Islam in Britain is great, and I think the government has taken the right steps of taking the right decisions of eradicating Islamophobia or addressing and acknowledging there is Islamophobia in Britain, and they are actually dealing with that. And we have seen some of the sentences been given to some of those silly people who are causing trouble for the Muslim and for the wider community.
The early foundations of Islamophobia in Britain were intertwined with broader anti-Asian racism. From the 1960s to the 1980s, South Asian immigrants, many who were Muslims, faced significant discrimination, violence, and hostility. This was fueled by far-right groups and inflammatory rhetoric like Enoch Powell's 1968 Rivers of Blood speech. Young British Pakistanis and Bangladeshis responded by organising movements such as the Bradford Youth Movement and the Newham Youth Movement to resist this violence. By the late 1980s, Islamophobia began to emerge as a specific form of prejudice against Muslims. The 1997 Runnymede Trust report was pivotal, bringing widespread attention to the negative stereotypes about Muslims and warning of increasing anti-Muslim sentiments in society. Despite this, the 9/11 attacks in 2001 marked a significant turning point, as Muslims were increasingly portrayed as a security threat. Muslims in Britain faced heightened discrimination, harassment, and violence, with media narratives often linking Islam with terrorism. The late noughties and early 2010s saw the rise of far-right groups like the English Defence League, known for their anti-Islamic rhetoric and demonstrations. Hate crimes against Muslims also surged, with a significant portion of mosques and Islamic centres across the UK experiencing vandalism or arson. Throughout the 2010s, studies highlighted the persistent discrimination Muslims faced, particularly in employment and education. Islamophobia manifested itself into bullying, particularly targeting Muslim women and girls wearing the hijab. The political climate in Britain further contributed to Islamophobia.
We have a problem with a hostile community coming in and declaring war.
The 2016 London mayoral election saw Islamophobic rhetoric used against Sadiq Khan, who became the city's first Muslim mayor.
And I'm so proud that London has today chosen hope over fear and unity over division.
Despite Sadiq Khan's message of hope and change, tensions continue to rise, with Islamophobia often being dismissed and an increasing number of attacks on mosques. Rhetoric used in elements of mainstream media painted Islam as a threat and as Muslims trying to take over Britain, which just added more fuel to the fire. And so it was important for me to ask whether people believe this and whether in their eyes Muslims were an enemy within. From the people I've spoken to, along with the overwhelming number of anti-protests taking place across the country, it's clear that the majority of people don't think Islam is a threat to Britain.
I'd love everyone to think the same, but obviously within the greatness of the human being, we don't have that facility to do that. And there will always be bad people. Bad people do good things and good people do bad things, so within that balance.
Being a Muslim doesn't define someone being bad or good. It's just we have individual differences.
Britain's made of all different cultures, all different societies, and I think it just adds to that, if anything. It's not taken away from anything or anything like that.
It's got nothing to do with Islam. What's happening and what happened in Southport, absolutely nothing. But we need to get together to save our young people from knife crime, from drug crime, from poverty, and redirect that anger, which is acceptable and justified.
Now, earlier in the day, I had spoken to Colin, who had been one of the protesters outside the Abdullah Quilliam Mosque, but was invited to come down to today's event by a friend. I particularly wanted to hear about what he thought of the event and whether his perspective on Islam had changed because of it.
I've been made more than welcome in here tonight. Total strangers I've never met in my life. They come up to me, talk to me. It's like I've known them all my life, and they're very, very friendly people. And I can honestly say, it's been a big eye-opener.
Do you feel like you've got a different perception about Islam and about Muslims after this event?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, you can't tell everybody. You always get a bad apple in a bunch, no matter what race you are. So, yeah, it has.
England is a country of law, and as long as it stands by the law, everybody will be safe and everything will come back to normality. Have no fear. Go about doing your daily lives, and you will be you're in a safer place than any other country in the world.
So perhaps a different method is needed to tackle Islamophobia and anti-migrant hatred. Rather than using slurs or labelling individuals as fascists, maybe it's time to engage in real discussion and understand that not everyone who is on the other side is as radical as you might assume. In fact, across the debate, we clearly see Brits struggling with the cost of living crisis, feeling politically isolated, and being extremely frustrated with media outlets that they no longer trust. Maybe those are the real issues facing this country, and remaining divided in tackling such issues is the real threat that Britain faces.